You have probably noticed it before. You walk into a room and something shifts, not in a dramatic way, not in a way anyone would point to or name out loud, but there is a feeling, a subtle tension that appears when certain people arrive. The conversation changes, people sit up a little straighter, or they go a little quieter, or they start performing a version of themselves that feels slightly off. The energy in the room rearranges itself around one person, and nobody talks about it. And here is the strange part. The person who caused all of that did not do anything wrong. They did not insult anyone. They did not brag. They did not correct anyone or try to show off. They just showed up. They were just being themselves. And something about them, something about the way their mind works, made the room uncomfortable. If you have ever wondered why intelligence, a quality that everyone says they admire, can actually make people pull away, you are in the right place. Because today, we are going to explore something that most people are afraid to admit. Intelligence does not always bring people closer. Sometimes, quietly and without warning, it pushes them away. And the reasons why are more personal and more painful than you might expect. But before we get into it, I want you to think about something. Have you ever been in a conversation where you were genuinely trying to connect, but the other person seemed uneasy? Not because you were rude or cold, but because something about the way you think, the way you see the world, made them feel like they were standing next to a mirror they did not ask for. If that sounds familiar, what we are about to explore might explain everything. Let us start with the most uncomfortable truth first. Intelligence, real intelligence, acts as a mirror. And most people do not enjoy what they see when they stand in front of it. This is not about being smarter than someone. It is about the effect that a certain kind of thinking has on the people around it. When someone who thinks deeply enters a conversation, they often do not realize that their very presence is asking a silent question. It is not a question they speak out loud. It is a question the other person feels in their bones. And that question is, am I enough? Consider a case profile of how this plays out. Picture two co-workers at lunch. One of them is talking about a show they watched last night. The other, without meaning to, redirects the conversation toward a deeper topic. Maybe the psychology of the characters or the social themes the show was exploring. Nothing aggressive, nothing intentional. But the first person suddenly feels a small pang of discomfort. They feel like the conversation just shifted to a level they were not prepared for. And in that moment, they are not reacting to the topic. They are reacting to a feeling. The feeling that they are somehow not operating at the same frequency. This is what I call the unspoken mirror. And it is one of the primary reasons intelligent people make others uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with arrogance. It has nothing to do with showing off. It is simply the fact that when you think at a certain depth, the people around you become aware of a gap. Not a gap you created, a gap they suddenly notice. And for most people, that awareness is deeply unsettling. It triggers something primal, a quiet insecurity that most of us carry, but rarely have to face. And the thing about mirrors is that nobody blames the mirror for what it shows, but they still look away. They still avoid it when they do not want to see something. And that is exactly what happens with intelligence. The intelligent person becomes a reminder, not a judge, not a critic. Just a reminder that the world has layers some people have not explored. And that reminder, even when it is completely silent, can feel like a threat. It does not matter how kind you are. It does not matter how humble you are. If your mind operates at a depth that other people can feel, some of them will pull away. Not because they dislike you, but because being near you forces them into a kind of self-awareness they were not expecting. And for many people, that self-awareness is the last thing they wanted on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, this leads us to something even more interesting. Because intelligence does not just create discomfort through depth. It creates discomfort by breaking the unspoken rules of how we are supposed to interact with each other. Every social environment has a script. You walk into a party. You ask how someone is doing. They say fine. You talk about the weather or the food or something easy and forgettable. That is the script. And for most people, the script is comfortable because it keeps things predictable. Nobody has to be vulnerable. Nobody has to think too hard. Everyone stays on the surface, and the surface feels safe. But intelligent people often struggle with the script, not because they are rude or antisocial, but because their brains are wired for something different. They are wired for meaning. When someone asks them how they are doing, they actually consider the question. They think about how they really are, and for a brief moment, they weigh whether to answer honestly or just say good, like everyone else. When a conversation stays on the surface for too long, they feel a pull towards something deeper, something real, something that actually means something to the people in the room. And when they follow that pull, when they steer the conversation toward honesty or complexity or an idea that actually matters to them, the other person often does not know what to do. It is not that the other person is stupid. It is that they were not prepared for depth. They signed up for small talk, and suddenly they are in a conversation about meaning or vulnerability, or the nature of trust, and they feel exposed. They did not have time to put their armor on, and so they pull back. They change the subject. They make a joke. They check their phone. And the intelligent person is left standing in the middle of a conversation that just evaporated, wondering what they did wrong. Research published in the British Journal of Psychology found that highly intelligent individuals actually report lower life satisfaction when they socialize more frequently with friends. That sounds backwards at first. More friends should mean more happiness, right? But for intelligent people, the issue is not the quantity of interaction. It is the quality. Surface-level conversations drain them. Small talk does not recharge their social battery. It empties it. And so, when they break the script, when they push past the weather and the weekend plans and try to reach something meaningful, they are not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. They are trying to find the one thing that makes social interaction worthwhile for them. Connection, real connection. The kind that happens when two people stop performing and start being honest. But here is the cost. When you break the script in a room full of people who are comfortable with it, you become the problem. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you exposed something that everyone was silently agreeing to ignore. The unwritten social contract says, we will keep things light, we will not go too deep, and we will all pretend that this is satisfying. And the moment someone violates that contract, even gently, even with the best intentions, the room turns on them. Not aggressively, usually not even consciously, but the energy shifts. People lean away, the eye contact breaks, and the intelligent person is left feeling like they committed a crime they cannot name. And that exposure, even when it comes from a place of genuine curiosity and warmth, can feel threatening to people who are not ready for it, because depth requires vulnerability. And vulnerability, in most social settings, is the one thing nobody signed up for. Now let us go deeper, because behind all of this social friction, there is something happening inside the intelligent person's brain that most people never see. And it explains a lot about why they think the way they do. There is a brain network called the default mode network. You can think of it as the part of your brain that turns on when the world goes quiet, when you are not focused on a task, when you are sitting in silence or lying in bed at night. The default mode network lights up. It is the system responsible for self-reflection, for connecting memories to present experiences, for imagining future scenarios, and for building the story of who you are. Everyone has a default mode network, but in people with high trait introspection, people who naturally think deeply about themselves and the world around them, this network is unusually active. It does not just turn on when the world goes quiet. It hums in the background all the time, like a second conversation happening beneath the surface of every interaction. What does this actually feel like? It means that while most people are listening to a conversation, the deeply intelligent person is also processing the subtext. They are reading body language. They are noticing the gap between what someone is saying and what they seem to mean. They are connecting the current moment to a pattern from last week or last year, or from a book they read 5 years ago. Their brain is making connections at a speed and at a depth that most people are simply not operating at. And this is not something they can turn off. It is not a choice. It is not something they are doing to seem impressive or aloof. It is the way their neural architecture is wired. The storm of connections is always running. The pattern matching is always on. And while it produces extraordinary insight in quiet moments, in social settings it can feel like trying to listen to 2 radio stations at the same time. Research has shown that the default mode network plays a crucial role in creativity, empathy, and the formation of personal identity. It is the network that allows you to imagine what someone else is feeling. It is the network that connects seemingly unrelated ideas into new insights. And it is the network that, in its most active form, never lets the intelligent person fully rest. Their mind is always working, always weaving, always searching for the deeper pattern. And while that is an extraordinary gift, in many contexts in social settings, it can create a strange kind of distance, because while everyone else is just having a conversation, the intelligent person is having the conversation and analyzing it at the same time. And that dual awareness can make them seem distant, distracted, or worst of all, like they are judging everyone in the room. Which brings us to what might be the most misunderstood quality of all: metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking. It is not just self-awareness. It is a deeper level of self-awareness where you observe your own thoughts, question your own reactions, and analyze your own behavior in real time. Most people operate on autopilot for much of the day. They feel something, they react, they move on. But a metacognitive person adds a layer. They feel something. And then they ask, why did I feel that? Was that reaction proportional? What does it say about me? Is there a pattern here I should pay attention to? This sounds like a superpower, and in many ways it is. It leads to faster personal growth, deeper emotional intelligence, and a richer understanding of one's own mind. But it comes with a cost that most people do not expect. When you are constantly observing your own behavior, other people start to feel observed too, even when you're not analyzing them. Even when your introspection is pointed entirely inward, the intensity of your self-awareness radiates outward. People sense it. They feel watched, even when they are not being watched, and they interpret that feeling as judgment. It is one of the cruelest ironies of intelligence. The more you understand yourself, the more other people assume you are trying to understand them, and not in a warm, curious way, in a clinical, evaluating way, as if you are taking them apart in your head piece by piece and forming opinions about what you find. Most of the time, that is not what is happening at all. But the perception is powerful, and perception, in social situations, is everything. Let us look at a narrative illustration of this dynamic. Imagine you are at a family dinner. Someone tells a story and the whole table laughs. You laugh too. But then, a moment later, you catch yourself thinking about why the story was funny, what it reveals about the person who told it, and whether the laughter was genuine or just a social reflex. You do not say any of this out loud. You are just thinking it. But your face shifts, just slightly. Your eyes go somewhere internal for a second. And the person sitting across from you notices. They do not know what you are thinking, but they feel the weight of a mind that is always processing. And to them, that weight feels like scrutiny. This is the paradox of metacognition. The more aware you are of yourself, the more uncomfortable you make the people who are not aware of themselves. Your self-reflection becomes a mirror they never asked for. And in a world where most people prefer not to look too closely at their own patterns, the person who cannot stop looking becomes a source of quiet unease. But here is where I want to shift the conversation, because we have been talking about why intelligent people make others uncomfortable. And all of that is true. But if we stop there, we miss the most important part of the story, because the person who feels the most discomfort in all of this is usually the intelligent person themselves. The isolation that comes with high intelligence is something that researchers have documented and that millions of people quietly live with every day. A study by Satoshi Kanazawa and Norman Lee, using data from over 15,000 adults, found that highly intelligent people actually experience less life satisfaction from frequent social interaction, not because they dislike people, but because the kind of interaction most available to them, the surface level, script-following kind, does not feed them, it starves them. And after enough of that starvation, many intelligent people begin to withdraw, not because they want to be alone, but because being with people who cannot reach the depth they need feels lonelier than being by themselves. This is the climax of the story, and it is the part that hurts the most. The intelligent person sits in a room full of people and feels invisible, not because no one is talking to them, but because no one is talking to them in the way they need. No one is asking the real questions. No one is pushing past the script. No one is matching the depth that their brain is quietly begging for. And the intelligent person, the one whose brain never stops searching for meaning, begins to wonder if there is something wrong with them, if they are too much, too intense, too deep for a world that seems perfectly happy at the surface. They start to believe that the discomfort they see in other people's eyes is proof that they do not belong, that their intelligence is a kind of social disease, something they should learn to hide or at least turn down. And so they try. They shrink. They stick to the script. They laugh at jokes they do not find funny and nod along to conversations that bore them. And the loneliness gets worse, because now they are not just isolated from others. They are isolated from themselves. And I need you to hear something right now, if that is you. There is nothing wrong with you. Your intelligence is not a wall. It is a bridge. But a bridge only works when someone is willing to cross it. And the truth is, most people are not ready to cross that bridge. Not because they cannot, but because the depth on the other side asks something of them that they are not sure they want to give. It asks them to be honest. It asks them to be present. It asks them to stop performing and start being real. And that is terrifying for a lot of people. But the people who are willing to cross, those are your people. And they are out there. They might be rare. In fact, Researchers have pointed out that gifted individuals represent only the top 2 to 3% of the population, which means finding intellectual peers is statistically uncommon. But uncommon is not impossible. Those people exist. They are the ones who light up when you go deep. They are the ones who meet your intensity with their own. They are the ones who feel relief, not discomfort, when you skip the small talk and go straight to what matters. Those connections are rare. I will not pretend they are easy to find, but when you find them, they are the most meaningful relationships you will ever have, because they are built on something that most relationships never reach. They are built on truth, on mutual depth, on the kind of honesty that only happens when two people stop performing and start being real with each other. So here is my advice, and I mean this personally. Stop apologizing for your depth. Stop shrinking yourself to fit rooms that were never built for you. The discomfort you create is not your problem to solve. It is a signal that you are operating at a level that most people have not reached yet. And while that can be lonely, it is also the thing that will eventually lead you to the people who actually see you. Your intelligence is not the reason you are alone. It is the reason the right people will find you truly unforgettable, and the reason you deserve to stop hiding the best parts of yourself. Thank you for being here tonight. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Tell me about a moment when your intelligence made someone uncomfortable and how it felt to stand in that silence. And if you want more conversations like this, more quiet explorations of minds most people do not understand, subscribe and stay close. We are just getting started.